trying to get a better understanding of people's perceptions of risk around natural hazards and the impacts of community engagement, communication, and how that influences people's preparedness. So that's my background. Tom?
Hi everyone, I'm Tom Duff. I'm also in the same team as Chloe, but my background's a lot more physical fire, so looking at the mechanics of the links between weather, fuels, fire behaviour, and how we can simulate that to look at predicting impacts.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tom. You might have just got a note there that recording is in process. We are recording this, and we will be putting it up on the website attached to the EOI, so anyone may access this in the future, and you can also refer back to it if you need. If you have any issues with that, please let us know, and we will try and accommodate your needs. Okay, so who is Natural Hazards Research Australia? We're a fairly new centre. We're only about just over a year old. We commenced in July 1st, 2021. We received 85 million over 10 years from the Commonwealth Government to conduct our core research program. We also have partner contributions that includes cash and in-kind as well. The core objectives of the centre are to protect human life and minimise harm and suffering. We also want to contribute to the developing and supporting well-prepared and resilient communities and invest in research that translates into action. Now, what does that actually mean? We are a public good organisation. Our bottom line is to produce research that can be used by our partners. This is absolutely integral to us and to the centre, because without tangible benefits, our work is pretty much pointless. With the rise of climate change, coupled with demographic increase and urban sprawl, serious work really needs to be done in the natural hazards research space, and that's what we're here to do. We also really like to try and make sure that the research that we're doing is sitting well with our agencies. One of the ways we can do that is to be running alongside a core research program some specific contract research programs with either, say, Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, or in this case with the CFA Bushfire Science Program. So this is a fairly new program. We run this on behalf of the CFA. As a project manager, I've got oversight of the program, which this time is fairly modest. It's probably only got a couple of projects, but as the program grows, it'll get more complex. That's why we have a fairly strong administrative arm right now, which seems like a bit of an overkill for now for one or two projects. But as we get along, it'll be more necessary as we're trying to kind of manage a range of projects. All of our CFA program projects have a CFA project lead, and they are the subject matter experts. So in this case, that would be Chloe and Tom. So as the research providers, you would go to the SMEs for direct project issues. But if there's any administration issues, you'd come to the centre. But this is only after the contract has been awarded. In the EOI phase, please just come to Natural Hazards Research Australia. Now I'll just hand over to Chloe to provide some project background to this project.
Yeah. Thank you, Loriana, for that. So I guess to give a bit of context for how this project came about. So Tom and I have been working in this position at CFA for about 2 years now. And part of that role, I guess, part of the benefit of having researchers embedded within CFA is that we can kind of wear two hats. So we're coming with our academic SME knowledge, but at the same time, we are being integrated into the organisation. It allows us to get a better understanding of some of the gaps. So in the research space, I guess the people who are on this call would also agree that we do research also because we want it to inform decisions. We want it to support good policy, and we want it to be able to help agencies to understand how effective their work is in achieving their outcomes and goals. So this is kind of where this project came from. So we are embedded within, so Tom and I are embedded within the Safer Together program, which is a Victorian government initiative, which basically acknowledges that and accepts that Victoria needs to live with fire. And in order to do that, fire agencies need to collaborate better together in order to identify and assess the effectiveness of our bushfire reduction activities, and in a coordinated way. And so we have this sort of statement of the situation that we have, and it's also a challenge because on the one hand, it's really, if you say we want to just suppress all fire, that's a really like blunt kind of way of understanding the role of a fire agency, and the idea is you put out a fire. But if you accept that you live with bushfire, all of a sudden it becomes very complex, and there are a lot of actors that are involved. There are a lot of values that you need to take into consideration. So if you're going to live with fire, what sort of actions, measures, activities do you undertake in that preparation phase to be able to reduce that risk? And what values are you protecting? What values do you prioritize over others? And so we're focusing on community values and understanding what they are and how we can better assess them. So you just jumped, sorry, the slide, if you could just go back for a second. And the other thing that we know that we're not starting, we don't want to create anything new. We know that there's lots of information out there. We know there's a great deal of science that already exists around identifying and assessing the effectiveness of bushfire risk reduction on particular values. We also know that there's a broad scope of work that's already happening across Safer Together and across the fire agencies in different areas around protecting particular values. So there's heaps of things out there. What the challenge really is understanding or synthesizing that, so that we have a holistic and strategic approach to the way in which we approach our reduction measures and our understanding of their effectiveness in reducing harm to the values that we care about. If we go to the next slide. So the project aims to really create that synthesis of what's out there in terms of the science, which I'm hoping that some of the people on the call today have already been involved in, but it's really important that it's an interdisciplinary approach. So it's not just focusing on the environmental values, we're also focusing on the economic and the social values. And that allows us to have a holistic understanding of what it is that we are measuring, and those interactions between them, and the trade-offs, the necessary trade-offs that would need to be taken in order to decide on those risk reduction activities, but also understand the interactions and the influences of those activities on reducing bushfire risk. And we're hoping what comes out of this sort of scoping, synthesizing approach is a report that identifies what's out there. So what in terms of the science, but also in terms of what the Safer Together fire agencies are doing, to have that really good overview of what's out there, so that we can start to sort of make some recommendations about where the gaps are and what the pathways forward are, so that we can have that strategic and holistic approach across the agencies and across those different disciplines, or across those different areas in which we work. The next slide. So this is quite a lot, but I'll talk you through it. I guess the point is, this project is not, we anticipate that the benefits of the project aren't just for one particular thing. So as part of Safer Together, there's a bushfire risk management strategy that's being developed. And as part of that strategy, there's a monitoring, evaluation and reporting and improvement framework. And this research could be really useful for identifying or supporting the identification of indicators to evaluate the effectiveness of a range of the mitigation activities that are undertaken within Safer Together, in terms of vegetation management, land use planning, and that's sort of also beyond the Safer Together program. But there's that opportunity there to really have that structured and holistic approach that goes across the agencies when we talk about these values, that we have identified what they are and their measurements, and we're using the same sort of measurements across the agencies. Things like a cost benefit analysis, again, that's another place where we could use these indicators or use these identified values to inform the indicators for the cost benefit analysis. Bit of vegetation management plans in terms of those decisions around, well, what are we protecting, what are we prioritizing with the vegetation management practices for our fire behavioral models. So to be able to add additional values or assets to those models would be really useful beyond house loss. It could help us with the community safety, so understanding or informing that community engagement around what the identification of actions individuals could take or communities could take to reduce their risk. It also helps to inform that community engagement. So if we are using these specific ideas of what the values or definitions of what the values are, that helps also structure the way in which we communicate with communities and have those discussions around, well, what are the values that we want to protect in a particular community. And as I guess it kind of all leads then to potential workforce planning benefits. So if we know where the what we want to protect and where our priorities are, then we can also better plan for where that personnel and the capacities need to be to help effectively reduce bushfire risk. So next slide. Loriana mentioned at the beginning of her presentation that the reason or the hope for these types of projects through NHRA is that we will have a really strong engagement. So we're hoping that the project team leader for the research will work quite closely with CFA throughout the whole project, that we'll have oversight over milestones, that we'll be able to have to make sure, not to control the research in any way, but to make sure that there's that mutually beneficial outcomes for the research in terms of its contribution to the research discourse, but also that we're ensuring that the research outcomes are fit for purpose and are going to deliver something that we can actually use and to enable those benefits that I mentioned before. We're also hoping that there will be strong agency consultation. So the research, the way that we have structured it is that there's a literature review focusing on the scientific assessment of values and the effectiveness of risk reduction, but also there'll be a big component of talking to agency staff and getting an understanding across the different areas of Safer Together about how people are already working in this space, how people are already identifying what values do they work with, how do they measure the effectiveness of their activities. And we're expecting an engagement plan there, and CFA can also help identify those people, put the research team in contact with those SMEs. And lastly, in regard to any sort of dissemination activities around the project, if there's any public communication that's developed, we're expecting that that will be developed in consultation with CFA and NHRA. So regarding the key steps of the project, what we've put in the EOI is that we have, first step would be to develop a project plan, and that would include, I guess, the engagement plan, communications plan, and that would be in consultation with CFA. Then we have a systemic literature review, as I mentioned before, which is focusing on understanding what's out there in terms of the science around community values and how to measure the effectiveness of bushfire reduction action activities. And then the third step is that analysing the existing systems and practices within fire agencies in Victoria. The fourth step is the preliminary report that would be submitted to CFA for feedback. We're hoping that there'll be presentations out of this work, and once the project report has been worked through between CFA and the project team, that there would be a workshop with our agency end users that were involved in step 3 to validate the findings, and then there would be a presentation and a final report. So that's how we've structured the project, and we're hoping that that really enables both for that contribution to the scientific research, but also really importantly that we're making sure that as we go through the project that we're keeping the outputs on track to be really beneficial for Safer Together. In terms of budget and time frame, so it's a maximum budget of $273,000 for this project, and it must be completed within 2 years. I think I hand over to you, Loriana.
Thanks, Chloe. That was really great. Very comprehensive. Yeah, look, now we're just going to get into the kind of the administration side of things for you, just to help you understand how you can provide your submission to us. So the governance and reporting requirements of the project, We ask for one lead provider for contracting purposes. These are normally smaller contracts. We aren't very interested in entering into multi-party contracts for these kind of projects. So we would ask, if you've got a consortium arrangement that you're thinking about, we would ask that you would have one lead provider. The contract is directly with NHRA. It's not with CFA. That means, though, that that this contract will sit under the header agreement that we have with CFA. So there are some immovables in that contract which we cannot change. If you would like to request a copy of that contract, please send an email to myself or to the research inbox or to Varna, and we will happily provide you with a draft contract there, so you can have a look at your own leisure. This project will report to the project control board. We'll do this in a variety of ways. One of those will be through the project plan, through the quarterly reports, through milestone reporting, and through the final evaluation report. The project control board, this allows the project to ensure that it's sticking with the quality and be able to kind of monitor the project to ensure effectiveness. And yes, yep. There's a CFA research lead will be attached to the project, and there'll be close engagement, as Chloe's already described. In particular for this project, there'll also be a project reference group set up as well for you to be able to report to ensure that the project is really getting to what it needs to be. Yes, look, I've already spoke about the project reporting. Okay, next page. The project and EOI information is available on our website. That's the link there. We've got a centre contact, research at natural hazards inbox. And EOIs are to be submitted to that inbox by 11:59 Monday, 10th of October. You are likely, I'm not sure what's on the EOI now, but my suggestion is that you'll likely be informed of success or non-success by probably in 4 weeks' time. I think we're extending that period to what we originally put in, and we will make some changes to EOI if we need to. So making a submission. So please keep those project proposals to 8 pages. We don't want this to be too onerous on anyone but making a submission. Clearly address the specifications set out in the EOIs. The proposal must include an introduction, a project plan for delivery, clear description of deliverables through the various stages of the project, and a detailed project budget, and a summary of staff and skills. And yes, you can review a draft contract if you would like to. My advice to you, if you are thinking about submitting, would be to please just follow what's in the EOI. Make it easy for us to find out what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. That's the best advice I can give you. We will be selecting the preferred candidate. Can we go to the next? Based on the following criteria that's here, the research development. So if you follow those, what we had originally with the introduction project plan, and you look at this and make sure that somewhere in there you're addressing these 5 assessment criteria, then you'll be in a great position. So the centre and the CFA research lead will review the submitted EOIs against this criteria, and we'll make a joint recommendation to CFA for approval for our preferred candidate. So that's it from me now. Chloe or Tom, did you have anything you wanted to add to that kind of governance admin side? No? I guess that's where we come to. Does anyone have any questions for anything? Were there any questions on the way as well, Varna?
No questions in the chat, no.
Well, if we have no questions, I noticed there's a few people that that said they were attending that haven't attended the session. They will, if they will also get an email with this and with the link for this webinar attached, so they'll get that. So we might get some questions later on. We will obviously. You have up until the 10th of October to ask us questions, and we will respond to you as quickly as we can. If we need to talk to CFA, we will talk to CFA. That shouldn't be a problem. But I think we should just wrap this up here and please, if you would like to submit, we're looking forward to seeing everyone's submissions.